Hello, hello, hello. I want to read the first part of my new fairy tale that I had written. I read it to Paul last night and he fell asleep while I was reading it to him. So if you fall asleep to this, that's good because it's soothing to the nerves. But if you get intrigued by how this fairy tale continues, then I will upload it to WordPress in written form and you can read the rest of it there. So it's a nice story of 15 pages. It's very cute. Cutesy, cutesy, pootsy. So I don't know if this stays on. I don't know if it does. It did. Okay. It stayed on. Oh, I'm so glad. Okay. The fairy tale is called The Rockefeller Mansion. So, it was December 15, 2025, when Mary and her two sons, Floyd and Boyd, I love these names, came across an old John Davison Rockefeller mansion that had been long abandoned in Philadelphia. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful architecture. They were kicked out of their small apartment and needed to find a place that would keep them warm and protected from the harsh weather. They climbed through an open window at the back of the building, which led them into a souterrain space. I actually had dreams about this quite a while back, even before I watched the fairy tales that are computer generated on YouTube. So I had an amazing dream about this, about the Rockefeller Mansion, and I didn't know which building that was in my dream, but I had like detailed images of it and all of that, which I will get to in this short story. So they walked through the entire castle looking for a warm and safe place to make into their living area. As they were walking slowly through the corridors, past many large rooms, they entered into an area where the air felt very warm and dry. They walked into a large room which had a dormant fireplace at the other end of the room. The air felt like it had a temperature of about 80 degrees Fahrenheit. There were 4 large sofas. Each of them had a sitting space which was about 8 feet long and 4 feet wide. The material was an old gray-pink silk embroidered with ornamental rose patterns. Mary brushed off the dust from the sofas, and she was grateful that they each had their own bed to sleep on. Floyd asked, "Why is this room so warm?" Mary said, "I don't know what is going on in here. I didn't think that this building was still powered with any city-run electricity." Mary, Floyd, and Boyd were exploring the mansion further, trying to find the kitchen, hoping to find something there that they could eat, like old cans of food. They were walking down a long corridor, and at the end they found a very large kitchen with shelves that had canned food, anything from string beans, carrots, peas, asparagus, peaches, apricots, and many other plants canned and preserved for many years. Mary checked the expiration dates and saw that the cans had expired, but only by a few years. She made them dinner and they ate in peace at an oversized wooden carved table from the 1800s. This table alone was worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. It was an antique. It was a really well-preserved antique and carved table. They walked back to the living room where the gray-pink silk sofas were waiting for them. They all fell asleep peacefully, each on their own sofa, feeling deeply grateful for this wonderful castle, which was a present to them from John Davison Rockefeller. They woke up the next day after sleeping for 10 hours, and they continued to explore the mansion. They found a large library room with shelves that reached all the way to the ceiling. There were ladders standing in the corners for them to climb up on and reach for books on the highest shelves. The books were all old and very dusty. Boyd said, "Look, Mary, I found an old photo album about the Rockefellers." They sat together on another beautiful couch, looking with much curiosity at each photo. Here were the Rockefellers throughout the centuries. Here was John Davison Rockefeller. He was his mother, and they moved through the album, and they found all the descendants. Floyd said, "Look, this man's name is David Rockefeller." Under the photo was a text written by David Rockefeller that said, "Whoever finds this photo album, look through the pages carefully and inspect each photo and text. Our family is a complicated maze of information and stories, and some of us have made bad mistakes." A couple of days later, Mary found a letter hidden behind more photo albums. The letter was sealed and addressed to Annie. Mary heard about a lady with the name Annie who had written a book about her life growing up for a few years in Europe with a man named David Rockefeller. Mary opened and read the letter. "Dear Annie, if you ever find this letter, which I was too ashamed and afraid to send, I want you to know that I love you, my sweet girl. What I have done to you is horrific, but you need to know that underneath my lust and cowardness and layers of prestige was real love for the little Annie. I know you grew up without a father. I miss you, my dear Annie, and I care deeply about you. I want you to inherit this castle, David Rockefeller." Mary read the letter to her sons. Then she took her sons to the local library where the boys played and read more books. Mary researched on the internet about Annie and David Rockefeller. She found discussions and speculations about David Rockefeller possibly being the biological father of Annie. Mary was thinking that she needed to contact Annie and suggest to her to have a DNA test done, which could potentially link her to David Rockefeller, if that was possible, if some of his DNA was still on clothing items or furniture. Maybe the letter itself could potentially have some of his DNA attached to the paper. Now, I have to interject in parentheses that I sent this short story, this fairy tale story, to Grok and to Gemini, and they had some ideas on different things, and I think it was Gemini that right away pointed out that it's probably not possible to get DNA from a long time ago, still good on furniture, still intact, like in one strand. So I would have to look for something else, like hair samples or something. So skin flakes alone wouldn't do it. I thought it was interesting, Gemini pointing that out. So maybe I'll interject that in here. And later I can put that in. She found a hair lock, a curl from David Rockefeller. Mary found Annie on the internet and wrote to her about the letter and her suggestion to do a DNA test. A week later, they were back at the library, and Mary had received a response from Annie, who was very interested in the letter from David. They made arrangements for Annie to visit the Rockefeller mansion and meet with Mary and her kids. A few days later, Annie read the letter from David at the mansion, and tears streamed down her face. 2 weeks later, a DNA test confirmed, so all of this, they probably found a hair sample. 2 weeks later, a DNA test confirmed that Annie was indeed the daughter of David Rockefeller, and it also turned out that Annie and Mary were remote cousins and Rockefeller descendants. Intrigued, they were both beginning to do an extensive research on further cousins, uncles, and aunts. Annie moved into the mansion with Mary and her kids. She brought her dog with her. Patsy, 60-year-old grandmother, was sitting on the couch together with her American Staffordshire Casey. That is all the way across on the other side of the United States now. So Patsy didn't know about Mary and Annie yet. So she was sitting with the American Staffordshire Casey, thinking about her past, as she always does. Low blood sugar was always bringing up the past. She was thinking about her brother and how he had cheated her out of her inheritance. It was time to cook pasta with spaghetti sauce. Patsy was cleaning up after guests while doing her maintenance work for the Ritz-Carlton when a famous writer with the name Larson was giving a meet and greet presentation about his latest novels. Patsy knew about this writer and had read some of his books before, and movies also. She remembered with painful clarity that she once had a nervous breakdown while reading one of his novels, and she had to call her therapist in the evening, who blamed her for having a nervous breakdown. Patsy was wondering whether blaming a client makes for being a good therapist. Probably doesn't make a very good therapist, she thought. Would she blame a client? She asked herself. Certainly not. Larson suddenly asked the audience to feel sorry for him and to say to him, "We feel sorry for you, Larson." This was something Patsy had not expected. She stared at Larson for a while from the back of the auditorium. He was frustrated, angry, and felt sorry for himself. He never felt really seen and heard. His fans were too absorbed in their own issues to clearly see him for who he is. After a while, a man from the audience stood up and shouted at Larson, "Your story about the forest and the modern-day Goldilocks girl was brutal, and it was cruel to your readers. That story was wrong, and you need to revise the ending of the story towards a proper Christian way of ending a story." Larson looked at the reader like he had been digging into a trash dumpster and then thrown old moldy bread at Larson. "I don't owe you a Christian way of ending a story. Those are my stories, and nobody tells me how to write." The reader sank back into his seat and hung his head down, shaking slightly. Then he began to cry out of anger and self-pity. Patsy thought this event was not a happy one. It's obvious that people are quite miserable and bottled up emotionally, to the point where anger bursts out, triggered by minor causes. Patsy walked towards the crying man and sat next to him. He looked at her confused. She said, "Let's go to Larson and towards the stage and talk to him." The crying man tried to figure out why she offered this. Patsy said, "Let's go and talk to Larson." They both stood up and walked towards the stage, where Larson was still ranting about his frustration about the oblivious and aloof readers. He looked at Patsy and the Christian. Patsy said to Larson, "I want you to tell this man why you wrote the gruesome ending of the story. You don't owe anyone a revision of the story, but explain to this man what you were feeling when you wrote the story, because maybe this will shed some light onto the reason of the story and what you were feeling and thinking at the time. This might help him if you shared your reflections and background story of your own life." Larson said, "Well, thank you for offering this interaction. This helps more than just approval from fans." The Christian had stopped crying and was now very alert and focused on Larson. The audience went silent because things were finally becoming interesting. Larson said, well, the reason for that gruesome ending is that at the time of writing that story, I was in therapy, and some heavy stuff was emerging. I was beginning to realize that my parents were not paying enough attention to me when I was a child. I was emotionally neglected, which caused me to wander off into the forest a lot and play with imaginary dwarfs. I was angry at my parents for not even noticing that I had wandered off. They were so busy with prestige all the time, so I wanted to make it very clear in the story that bad things can happen when parents don't pay attention to their babies. The Christian guy's jaw was open, but he was speechless for a while. Patsy said, "That is very honest and generous of you to share those insights with us, because I think most people in the audience don't even know what kind of brooding and melancholy can precede such turn of events in storylines." Larson nodded, and a tear was coming out of his eye. The Christian man said, "But we need to make sure to make the ending of the story orderly and make people feel like God is in charge." Larson said, "Which God? Jesus Christ? The Christian God Yahweh or Elite or Abraham or Mohammed?" The Christian shouted, "There is only one God." Larson said, "Not true, obviously. There are thousands of gods." Patsy said, "There are 5,000 gods on the internet alone. Who knows how many more in history and in people's imaginations?" Larson said, "Exactly right. I find it very aggravating to see Christians pop up in different events and presentations, shouting their uptight belief system propaganda into the crowd." The Christian guy had a red face and said, "You need to repent to Jesus." Patsy said to the Christian, "You were brainwashed and you think you need to constantly convert others into the same mind control as well. This is a mental illness. If you want to heal, you have to question your mind controlling religion. Truth is not religion. Truth shall set you free." Larson said, "I agree with you on this very much so. Thank you for this conversation. I think it's time that people begin to question things and really discuss those subjects in depth." Patsy's supervisor stepped in and told her, "You are fired, Patsy, for interfering in an event. You are only a maintenance worker and have no business talking to the guest speakers and the audience." Patsy said okay and walked out of the auditorium. As she was walking back home for 2 miles, it was already dark outside, but she was feeling confident that nobody would bother her since she was tall and strong. She was listening to Mozart's Requiem on her headphones, walking down Railroad Avenue in Los Angeles, when a group of Mexicans in an old car pulled up and shouted mean things at her. She kept on walking, but the men followed her in their car, and then they threw bottles at her while shouting, "You garbage, you white trash, you trailer trash." She walked towards their car without hesitation, and the driver pressed on the gas pedal in a panic, making the tires squeal as the car spurted forward. Patsy kept on walking and walking until she got home safely. Casey greeted her at the door, and her husband Donald McCalloway shouted from the kitchen that he had just made them fake shrimp burritos. They ate peacefully, and the imitation shrimp burritos tasted gourmet and much better than real shrimps. Patsy asked, "Did you read the ingredients on the package? What are the fake shrimps made out of?" Donald said, "They are made out of soy tofu and shiitake mushrooms." Patsy said, "That sounds really good." The next day, Patsy decided to petition for the whales again, since she had plenty of time now to spend her following days. She walked over to the Wild Oats Market and got her petition board out. Patsy asked the people who were walking past her, "Would you like to sign a petition to stop active sonar?" An older lady walking by stopped and nodded. Patsy said, "Thank you so much for caring." There were a few very friendly people who signed her petition, but as always, not all were nice and some were hostile. A fat man stopped and began lecturing Patsy on active sonar when Donald came over with Casey on the leash and chest harness to pick Patsy up. The other guy was still lecturing, and Donald interrupted him. Active sonar is a very aggressive loudspeaker that the U.S. Navy puts into the ocean, which sends out sounds that rupture the whale's eardrums and lungs, making them bleed to death internally. The other guy changed the subject, and he never signed, and started talking about space, and he once worked as an engineer. Okay, I gotta correct this here. I still see some typos. I don't believe it. Okay. Type. Okay. Oh, okay, I guess I'm gonna quit it here because I don't know if I should continue reading. I see there's still some... No, I'm not finished. There's still some mistakes in there that I need to correct before I put it on WordPress. So, okay, so... I clicked something and the whole thing shifted. No, I don't know what happened here. This is so weird. Okay. Oh man. This is I hope I didn't delete anything. Okay. Good. Active sonar is a very aggressive loudspeaker that the U.S. Navy puts into the ocean, which sends out sounds that rupture the whale's eardrums and lungs, making them bleed to death internally. I thought it was important for me to read this again, because a lot of people don't know about this. The other guy changed the subject and started talking about space and that he once worked as an engineer. So, that's what it was. The guy said there is no gravity in space at all. Donald corrected him and said even in space there is still some gravity, just not as much gravity as directly on a planet. The guy's face became red with anger and he started shouting. Donald said, "Well, that's just what I have heard." He said that in order to calm the other guy down. Patsy, Donald, and Casey walked back to their house. Donald said, "Man, that guy was scary. I thought he was going to hit me." Patsy said, "There are always crazies out there. Don't worry about it. Just don't argue with them. Remember the guy who tore the petition board out of my hands and then pulled his pants down? That could have ended badly if I had not called 911. After dinner, don't make things extra difficult. No, it's already difficult enough. So, after dinner, Patsy, Casey, and Donald were sitting at home on the couch, just looking outside into the garden, observing the tree branches and twigs moving slightly in the wind. Patsy was thinking about all of those mentally ill people who could not handle that someone knew more than they did. Patsy said, "We need therapy help centers for people with group therapy every day from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. so that people can begin to heal and speak about their fears and worries." Donald said, "That would be catastrophic. You have no idea how bad that would be. I have seen what people did to my mother in her music store. She invited them all in and gave them music instruments for free, and they all took full advantage of her and stole from her. They had these discussions a million times already." Patsy knew that he would just talk himself into a rage, so she left the subject alone. As he was still complaining about all of the people who took advantage of his mother, she let him talk and didn't say anything. Patsy was just thinking to herself, wondering about the pros and cons of one day creating this so desperately needed free therapy help center or community center that should be free from religion and free from mind control of any form. She needed to find people who would be on board with such a difficult to reach goal. There are teenage girls who commit suicide every day in every community worldwide. The sooner we can offer a safe haven for them to come home to and be embraced with open arms, the better the world would become. Patsy cried for a while with pitiful sobs. She remembered a cascade of painful moments in her life. It was always like a life review, often during the day, but mainly at night, lying awake in bed. Stuff would surface, like the guy who used to work for Lockheed Martin, who was fired and then ended up homeless, sitting for hours at night in front of the Safeway store in Marina del Rey, accepting handouts and donuts. He never questioned the corporation he worked for, and even while homeless, he still defended them tooth and nail. Patsy found those moments in time quite aggravating and frustrating. Those scenarios never faded away from her memory. In Pennsylvania, at the Rockefeller Mansion, Mary, Floyd, Boyd, and Annie had been making progress and cleaning up the entire castle room by room. They kept on finding relics of the Rockefeller family, such as porcelain dishes with blue flower patterns called Zwiebelmuster, dating back several hundred years, worth a lot of money. They found Chateau Margaux wine bottles, unopened and still good, but lucky for them, they didn't drink alcohol, so they left the bottles where they found them in the wine cellar shelves. But those were worth something if they decided to sell them to historians who drink wine. It would be a historic kind of winery experience for those historians. Mary and Annie would toast with them for the fun of it, but with glasses full of organic red grape juice from Eden Foods. Mary and Annie had been creating a meticulously organized timetable of events in the history of the Rockefellers, and they used one large room to pin up photos and notes from different folders and photo albums. They tried to piece together the generations and the names of fathers, mothers, daughters, sons, cousins, grandparents. They decided to call historians who specialize in family trees. A week later, they sat together with Dr. Sarah Chen around her large cardboard table made by architect Frank Gehry. They brought along one of the photo albums. Sarah had also done her research on the Rockefeller family, and they laid all of their findings on the table, sorting out the names and the people according to the years. Sarah told them that she will need about a week to get together a group of descendants of the Rockefeller family who are still alive today. She wanted a more condensed group of people who belong to the narrower range of relatives who live in the USA currently. She would call them with more information a week later. Patsy could not find another job. The hotels she contacted all told her right away that they didn't have any job openings available. Seemed strange, she thought. Was someone trying to discourage hotels from hiring her? She thought about doing a translation job at home. Maybe that would bring in some money that they needed for healthier food. Patsy had so many ideas in regards to reforming the food industry. We need the total grocery store and food reform worldwide, she thought. For example, the coffee creamer powders need a total reformation done because they were made out of unethical ingredients containing coconut powder, which comes from monkey exploitation, palm oil, which comes from the destruction of the orangutan jungles in Indonesia. Then the creamer powder also contains toxic chemicals which Robert Kennedy wants to outlaw, which apparently is a monumental undertaking of epic proportions, given the corporate resistance towards any positive change. Well, the good people are in charge now, which gives Patsy hope for a better tomorrow. They have already done a whole lot of good things, and they will get those toxins outlawed. It just takes time and extreme patience and the right political chess moves. Patsy wants to create a coffee creamer powder that contains only ethical and healthy things, like organic oat powder, agar-agar powder, quinoa powder, millet powder, cashew nut powder, shiitake mushroom powder, organic beetroot powder, plant emulsifiers, and plant anti-caking agents, all natural, all organic, and all ethically obtained. No monkey had to work for that, no animals had to suffer for it, and no animal ingredients were in it, and no milk from any living being, only from plants. Most people probably don't know that cow milk comes from farmers tearing baby cows away from their mothers, making them scream and panic. How can anyone still drink milk from an animal when so much horror goes into it? Those were Patsy's thoughts all day long, and often many hours into the night. Patsy would end up crying and praying to the infinite cosmos, "Please, Blue God, protect all living beings." A week had gone by, and Sarah called Mary and Annie with more information about the closer range cousin group of the Rockefeller family. They talked with Sarah on speakerphone, and Sarah listed the names. The next day, they met at the Rockefeller Mansion and sat around a very large, old, and carved table from the mid-1800s. Sarah added the names and any information she could find from the closer Rockefeller family group of remote cousins who are living today in the United States, and among those people there were names such as Chloe Sevigny, Ellen DeGeneres, and Patsy Nicole Mandelbrot. Now, in parentheses, the reason why I put Chloe Sevigny and Chloe Sevigny, I don't know how to pronounce, and Ellen DeGeneres in it. I should have put Angela Merkel in it as well, but she doesn't live in the United States. But I once did a face recognition on a website where it's like an online face recognition to see if your face resembles any famous people. I just wanted to see which faces. I already knew my face resembled Chloe Sevigny and Ellen DeGeneres a little bit. So, but then Angela Merkel also came up, and I was shocked. My God, I don't like Angela Merkel at all, who is also German. So, but Chloe Sevigny is part French, or mainly French, I guess, and Ellen DeGeneres is definitely United States and Anglo-Saxon. I don't know, maybe yes, British in her. But I have all of that. I have British, I have French, I have every single European country, and much more. So, and I thought it was very interesting that the computer brought up these faces and these names. So that's why I added it into this. I like them, and except for Angela Merkel, which I don't have in this book here. And Patsy Nicole Mandelbrot, that is the Patsy in California that I'm writing about, that had a lot of my experiences. So it's a fictional character. It's not me, but it is someone who definitely kind of represents me, sort of. So Patsy, I thought it's a nice name for an older woman. Nicole, obviously my name is Nicola with an A, but Nicole is more standard name. Nicola is a female name in Germany, but not in the United States, I think. There are very few Nicola girls in the United States, but they exist too. I've seen it, and in Canada also. And Mandelbrot, I chose that last name because Mandelbrot was a mathematician, and he figured out these calculations, these infinity calculations of fractal geometry. So, and I find that super interesting. So they sent emails to those cousins and waited for them to call back. Patsy, on the other hand, in California again, Patsy opened her computer, signed a couple of animal rights petitions, and then found a strange email from a historian with the name Dr. Sarah Chen. She opened the email, and it said, "Dear Patsy, my name is Sarah Chen. I'm a historian working with people who are interested in piecing together their family tree. Your name came up in my search for the closer range Rockefeller descendants. Among this group of about 50 cousins, your name appeared in my extensive research, and we would be very interested in getting to know you. Let me know per email or phone if you are available for a meeting with my clients at the Rockefeller Mansion in Pennsylvania. Many greetings and a warm welcome, Sarah Chen." Patsy was shocked. Rockefeller? Me? Related? How in the world? She thought about all of this and wrote back. They arranged for a meeting. A week later, Patsy, Casey, and Donald were on their way to Pennsylvania to meet with Mary, Annie, Floyd, Boyd, and Dr. Sarah Chen at the Rockefeller Mansion. As predicted, it took them 4 weeks to get there, but they finally arrived in their old schoolie bus that has Patsy's artwork painted on the outside. The Rockefeller Mansion dwellers welcomed them with open arms and led them to their large kitchen where Mary and Annie had cooked delicious cauliflower pasta with a garlic Alfredo sauce, all whole food, vegan, gourmet, perfect and very healthy. After dinner, they gathered around the large oblong table and looked at the old photo albums and the historic timetable of families and events. Casey was running through the rooms after the boys, who threw an inflatable globe around, which ended up being popped by Casey biting into it. Mary said, "This all feels so surreal, like we are in a dream, but it's a good dream I never want to come out of." Annie nodded. "Yes, indeed." Patsy asked, "What about the other remote cousins within the closer family range? Did they respond too?" Sarah Chen said, "Yes, about a handful of people have responded so far, but they could not meet us yet. You were the first." The boys came running into the room, saying, "Sarah, we found a sealed letter behind a dresser." Casey found the letter and we took it out of his mouth. "Maybe this letter helps you with more information about the Rockefeller family." Sarah said, "Thank you, Boyd. That is very helpful of you guys." Annie leaned forward, looking at the letter, and said, "This is getting more and more suspenseful." Sarah handed Annie the letter and asked her if she wanted to open it. Annie carefully removed the wax seal, opened the letter, and began reading it aloud. "My dear Annie, if you ever find this letter, please know that I am thinking about you all the time. I have severe remorse about the past, and I have severe remorse about some of my remarks to you, particularly when I said I hoped that you would never become famous. I cry over this every day. I am deeply and infinitely sorry, Annie. I tried to learn more about my own psychology over the years. I wanted to know why I acted the way I did and why I was enmeshed and involved with those string holders. Annie, I know the string holders sent you to me in order to get incriminating evidence against me. In case I have to put this in here. In case I ever step out of line from this ungood mafia-esque society. You didn't know better. You were just a child, but you were a child with high intelligence and insight. I saw your greatness, Annie, and it scared me, because I felt like you had power over me, even though you never meant to have power over me. I saw your immense potential and what you can become when you grow up. I saw the powerful Annie who does not waver nor bend towards the stringholder society. I saw the girl and the adult Annie who puts love over anything else. You have to eat extremely crinkling and crunching stuff while someone makes a video, by the way. It has to be done that way. So, and if that's not done, then you have to fall asleep. So either one. Popcorn would be better, would be quieter, but Fritos, they make the loudest sounds. So make sure to eat Fritos while someone is trying to make a video reading from their book. Just for the fun of it, to make it extra annoying. I saw the girl and the adult Annie who puts love over anything else. This scared me. It scared my ego, and that is why I acted with such callousness and coldness. I am not asking for forgiveness, because what I had done cannot be forgiven. I just wanted you to know about the psychological casualties. I always say casualties. About the psychological causalities. People deserve to know more about the people who hurt them. Underneath all of us is always a broken child who doesn't know how to proceed and how to interact properly with others. I need to put the sleeping bag over me. So, Annie, I'm infinitely sorry for everything. I know you are piecing together your life and you bravely move forward with your healing process. You are powerful, Annie. I know you are making something with your life and you are helping others to heal. Annie, you are my soul daughter and I love you. David. Everyone in the room cried rivers. Annie's hands were shaking, and she said, I didn't know that underneath this man David was someone who had the potential of seeing me for who I am. I can't forgive him for what he did, but I acknowledge his feelings and his remorse. Patsy said, he was too afraid to say it directly to you, but he kept thinking about the past and his mistakes, so he wrote those letters to you, which he never forwarded to you. And they just stayed here in his studios and library rooms. There may be more of those letters hidden behind books. Writing those letters was urgent for him, like a silent prayer to the infinite cosmos. That's too bad, the crinkling, just at this particular place. That's not good. That's unfortunate. But anyway, because this is not funny. This is not a funny subject. This is real serious. Sarah said, this turns out to become a very emotional and healing journey for all of us. Seeing others open up with their true feelings is a healing experience for everybody who hears their words. Patsy said, yes, that's why I had been thinking about establishing a therapy help center. People need this help center every day and attend a group therapy from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Every single community worldwide should have a therapy help center or community gathering center that offers all of this for free, including yoga, meditation, education, and a large library. Mary said, what if we make this Rockefeller mansion into the first therapy help center? Annie said, yes, that would be fantastic. I thought the same. We must do that. Sarah said, we need to find out whether we can somehow legally obtain this building and make a non-profit organization center out of it. We don't want to have to deal with lawyers who might stop by later on and claim the mansion for something else. Annie said, yes, very true. We need to find out how we can make this place into a healing center built on donations and also as a museum that is under antique architecture protection. They stayed in the mansion for several months, getting information and legal advice. Their mission had purpose beyond measure. They wrote to politicians, legislators, senators, lawyers, and activists. They received the grants and permits to make the mansion into the first therapy help center. Meanwhile, more and more Rockefeller cousins came together, meeting in the mansion, getting to know each other and helping along with the therapy help center. Patsy told the group of people, Dr. Arthur Janoff would be very pleased and grateful to us for helping people heal their emotional wounds. Many years in primal therapy and in Jano's school taught me about the utmost importance of an open group therapy where people are welcomed and encouraged to speak out their most hidden emotional burdens that had been bothering and depressing them for so many years. Group therapy from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. every single day, even on holidays and Christmas, will help people heal, specifically on Christmas. If applied worldwide, we can achieve world peace and make the Earth society become a Type 1 civilization that made it through the bottleneck of all mental and political obstacles. One day, we will become intergalactic. That's the end of the story. Yay! So I hope I didn't accidentally delete anything in the beginning. Just want to make sure. Yes, so just want to make sure that there was nothing deleted from this. So I might have to proofread it one more time. But whatever. Camera still running. I can't believe it. Now that is really cool. So yeah, so I ended up reading the whole story. I also want to put it on WordPress because I don't know, maybe I will make a computer AI video out of it with a voice that doesn't stutter and that doesn't put anything else into it in parentheses. This is just my home video here where I interject certain thoughts and stuff and take notes of things. But I might make this story into one of those computer narrated stories. I don't know. I think it's a cute story. I think it's a story that deserves to be told to the public because it has a bunch of stuff in it that I personally find very important for the world. That's why I have woven it into it. So we'll see, So I don't know if if you have to be some kind of Prime member on X or something or Gemini to have the AI make this into an AI generated video. So AI narrated video. So I don't know what it takes to create that. I've never tried that before. I'm gonna look into it. If you have to pay money for a different subscription to get access to those type of features, then I won't be able to do it because we have to save our money as best as we can. We live on a very limited budget for our retirement, and we have plans to make something happen later in the future. So Paul and I talked about this today. He thinks I should become a dog therapist. I would be good at it. And so he had this idea that we can make a yoga center for dogs. So that would be very nice. These things already exist. It's not original, but it would be something very nice. Definitely something nice to do. A yoga center for dogs that also has a dog bakery, and we can, in this process of doing that, we can, I don't know, we might even be able to make it a non-profit organization. Who knows? I have to look into it and see. Unfortunately, for a non-profit, you have to have 5 people, and that is very unfortunate because then you have to they have to all be making decisions on it, and that is almost always guaranteed to bring any kind of effort of a decent organization down right in the beginning. I've seen this also locally here. there was a group of people that wanted to do an animal help group and a local animal issue help group, and boy was that a disaster. Oh my gosh, just it didn't go anywhere at all. The opinions were so incredibly diametrically opposed, and such different type of people. Like there were very hardcore right-wing people in that group that there was no way I could have even any kind of reasonable conversation with. And then the liberal ones, they were just always completely compliant and complacent and went along with whoever had the loudest voice and the most vested interest driven voice. Those are always the most adamant ones, vested interest driven. So then it doesn't get anywhere, it doesn't go anywhere, it doesn't lead to anything. So any decent idea on really helping the animals locally was just completely right up front rejected and never even listened to, never even considered. And that made me so angry that at some point Paul walked out of that before me, and then I didn't take me long after Paul left. I left that group as well. Very sad, was very disappointing experience to see how people are, and it's just like, how can people even come to any kind of conversation or communication if any kind of effort is already blocked off right in the beginning because of greed and because of idealistic views or differences in world views and religious views and so on? How is that? How can we come to any kind of agreement and consensus? Right? It's just total chaos, and feels like the people that truly cared, maybe there were just 4 people that truly cared, maybe 5 people. The rest of them, they were originally over 100 people. So it's like, do they even care? Why were they even there? What are they trying to do? What are they trying to accomplish? Some people just go there because they're bored. There's nothing else to do. So there's something interesting happening locally, So, yeah, which didn't go anywhere at all. But anyway, that is what it is. As Captain Paul Watson said, humans are insane, and that's the truth. It is the truth, and that's why we need therapy help centers, so that we can finally pack it all out. Okay, we can finally talk about all of that stuff that is going through our heads. We can finally address all of that. So I don't know. I don't want the computer to fall. Now I'm looking. I'm looking up in the video. It's okay. That's all right. I have to put here's my blue god. The blue god in dog form. So, yeah, my wrist. I have a very, very sensitive wrist. When my wrist gets cold, it starts to hurt like a carpal tunnel. So I have to keep that warm. Yeah, these are my ideas. This is what I contribute towards the world, and I want to make the world a better place. I don't know how to get the message across as me, Nicola, saying it. So maybe if a fictional story character says it, it will be better. It will have more of a I don't know, maybe some kind of less pressured message, right? The message comes through in a more artistic, in a more playful way, through a story. Then it comes through from someone who is an activist or someone who is a lecturer like I am. Okay, so I don't know. Someone who is a proselytizer, someone who is giving advice. Right? So in story format, it might reach a little bit further to the public and also reach deeper into people's minds. So that's what I'm hoping for. I don't know. We will see. So what else was there that I wanted to discuss? Yeah, existence is harsh. Okay, it's very harsh for me and for many other people as well. And particularly teenage girls, they are the most affected by society. They are the most affected in a negative way. They are the total victims. They are completely squashed. They are completely battered into the ground, more than anyone else. Okay, and in particular, white teenage girls. It's the truth. I'm not saying this because of racism or something. It is, maybe it sounds race prejudice or something, but it's not even race prejudice. It's a statistical truth. Okay, so Hillary Clinton had always addressed that and wanted to do something about it, and was stopped right up front, just like us, Paul and me, with this animal help center that we wanted to create. That, I mean, other people started with that because they wanted to help expose a hoarder. So they wanted to expose a veterinarian who was a hoarder and who had a bunch of sick animals that were not getting any better. Animals that were abandoned in his place, or that he had adopted and was not taken care of. And I met him later on, a very troubled man, very psychologically damaged, and his wife was dying at that time and from a brain tumor, and they were going through unimaginable hardship. So it's not like I'm judging them too harshly, because they were really going through a hard time and they were totally overwhelmed. They didn't even have enough people that volunteered to help the animals. So, but then it would be better to euthanize the animals than keep them alive in a very unfortunate situation where they're understaffed and don't have the resources to help good enough. Okay, so that was my criticism, and that is also, I guess, the criticism that the people who initially wanted to get people together to help, that they had in mind. Okay, it was about these people. But that veterinarian, I feel sorry for him. He's very severe type 2 diabetes. He injects insulin, and he showed me his belly with all of these needle marks, and I felt so sorry. I felt sorry for him, and it's awful. Okay, so, but that's why we need therapy help centers. We need help centers that are community centers where people come together and where nobody has to hide behind their closed door at home, or feel ashamed about something, or feel like they can't reach out for help, or they're afraid to reach out and then be rejected or something. We need a community center that is the therapy help center number one. Community center, that just a general community center, like a focus point of every community. A center with a large garden, with a very large facility, large indoor facility. Depends on how much money the community has, right? I mean, it could be happening in a barn if necessary, but it should be happening. Okay, so that people have a place they can come to. And even the people that are shy and afraid and withdrawn and they feel ashamed or whatever, they can come and they can first sit in and listen. They don't have to talk. Just sit there and just come there out of curiosity, right? And see what's happening. There's a lot of old spinster guys in that community there that I'm talking about. Just 40 minutes drive from here. So where we have the other house where the internet is. Okay, I can't name the locations, unfortunately, because I have people that want to shoot me. But why? Because I care, because I'm a reformer, that's why. Okay, so even though I'm already I have absolutely no following, not even any friends, right? No supporters, no one, absolutely nothing. Everything I do is shadow banned and heaven banned. But there are still people that want to kill me. So that's weird, isn't it? So apparently what I say is going against the string holders. So, and they don't like it. They want to get rid of every potential reformer there is in the world. And even if that's a child or a crazy artist or a retired person, they don't care. Okay, it doesn't matter who it is. They smell blood. They smell reformer from 20 miles against the wind. So it's the truth, you know. They have their filaments out there, that they have their tentacles out there that scan the whole human species for potential reformers. A reformer, we gotta get rid of that reformer right up front so that they can't reform anything, because they're making so much money on the way it is, right? So they don't want to reform that, of course. They don't want to reform the medical industry. No, they're making billions and trillions on sick people. So they want to keep them sick. They don't want a reformer that tells people how to heal themselves, right? It's just one out of gazillions of examples. But Paul and I, we are both reformers, and that's where we're both completely in tune. Okay, we are in tune in terms of animal rights, in terms of justice, in terms of law, in terms of order, in terms of law enforcement. Okay, we are completely in tune. We're completely in agreement with all of these things. And for me to find someone to be in agreement with in the way I want to reform the world, that's like, my gosh, I mean, that's a strange coincidence if you want to think that there are coincidences. There are no coincidences, obviously. So nothing is a coincidence. Okay, I look identical to Paul's mother, for example. Is that a coincidence? I don't think so. Okay, I don't think so. Paul and I are related. I already know that we don't need to do a DNA test to know we're distant cousins. Okay, I'm absolutely certain of that. So that's why he feels like a second dad for me. Okay, and not a lover relationship partner, okay, not a life partner in a marriage sense. We're married on paper, but we are we are partners we're life partners in an activist type of way. Okay, we're best friends, and that's what matters more than anything else. So everything else is, it's just like the cherry on the cake. If you find a partner that you're really in love with and all of that, then you're very, very lucky. But the foundation has to be total trust and friendship. So otherwise it doesn't work out. So yeah, we have our idealism, if we want to call it that. We have our worldview, and we have our goal to reform the world into a better place. So Friedrich Nietzsche, I'm reading Friedrich Nietzsche's books. Right now I'm reading Ecce Homo, which is his autobiography. This is a much later work. That book, he wrote that book when he was already when his brain was already starting to dissolve. But that was in the beginning of the brain dissolution. But it goes directly in synchronicity with his philosophical dissolution of the idea of self. And then he became more and more and more in agreement with Gautama Buddha and with Buddhism as a mental hygiene, as he called it, rather than a religion. So he didn't call it a religion. People make a religion out of it, but that's not what Gautama Buddha wanted to make out of it. He was a philosopher. Ecce Homo is Latin and means look for the person, look at the person, look at the human. Homo is human. Look at the human. So it's an autobiography that says, look at me as a person. So not just the person that is portrayed to you by the media, and even during his lifetime he was being slandered. You can imagine, slandered right and left into the ground. He pissed people off endlessly with his books. He made so many people mad. The critics were he was quoting the critics quite in the beginning of that book. I had to laugh. It was very funny the way he wrote it. So his fiercest critics once said, he has quite a courage to go against all of the human values. Well, Friedrich Nietzsche himself, he declared himself the destroyer of family values, of human values, of moral values, because he criticizes them. He finds fault with them, and rightly so. So he was a serious reformer, okay, and he did have an influence with his books. He didn't reach super wide, but I mean, most people are not in agreement with him. But at least there are a few people that connected with that, and for them it was like a lifeline, his books, and what he had to say. So it made the right people feel heard and seen, and it made them feel like they're not alone in their endeavor of having better ideas for making the world a better place. So, and then he also quoted all of the names that are his strong supporters as well, and he spoke of deepest gratitude about those. So anyway, so I have to turn the video off now. Peace and love for all living beings.